of our indicators, or indeed the interpretation analysis of our data, is a really, really critical component of the evaluation. We know that data is not neutral. There are lots of forms of data. People value data to different extents. Some people are really interested in the numbers, the money, whereas some people are interested in the qualitative data, the stories and the meaning. All of those types of data, those different perspectives, are deeply valuable for an evaluation. Those different types of data and the indicators that they measure enable us to holistically understand whether a social program has worked well. In an evaluation, we need an appropriate suite of data sources to identify and measure the indicators.
In the course of conducting an evaluation, we often collect different types of information. So we collect quantitative data, which is anything that we can enumerate, numbers. And these things are very tempting to collect large quantities of, because we can then measure change between a number at point 1 and a number at point 2. However, and these data allow us to then create a very broad, high-level picture of what happens to numbers of people, numbers of events, numbers of interactions over time. We can also then use those numbers to compare the situation in different areas, and that is a very broad, high-level change that we can measure. However, it's not the whole picture. Sometimes we need to get a richness of the story that we can only get through what we call qualitative data, and this is often the detailed experience of people who've been part of the reform program, whether it be the service providers as part of one of the initiatives, or those people who've experienced domestic and family violence, or those people who've perpetrated it. So to spend time and gather that rich story of their experience will allow us to answer the questions often of how and why, rather than just did it happen.
It is never the case that one data source will tell us everything we need to know. We need to bring multiple data sources together and analyse them in a way that presents a holistic picture of the efficacy and limitations of the social program that we're evaluating.
Data is always very interesting because we have the opportunity to use qualitative, that is non-statistical if you like, and quantitative, which is very numbers-based data. And within the systems that we're operating in the domestic and family violence prevention strategy space, we deal with a lot of administrative systems, which has a lot of quantitative data. So that's immediately available to us. However, explaining that quantitative data often needs us to get almost a personal perspective on that, and that we need qualitative data for. So to add insight into the analysis of the quantitative data, we would then seek to have some qualitative data. Sometimes that qualitative data could be anecdotal, sometimes it could be as robust as quantitative data.
When we're conducting evaluations for governments and community organisations, we're often asked whether we should use quantitative data or whether we should use qualitative data. We have a threefold answer to that. First, it depends on what the social program is and what the evaluation questions we're trying to answer are. Secondly, we need to understand that quantitative data and qualitative data tell us very, very different things, both of which are really significant for varying for multiple sorts of evaluations. Third, we need to understand that some quantitative data and some qualitative data will be very, very easy and appropriate to access for an evaluation, whereas some data sources, both qualitative and quantitative, will not be accessible for any evaluation, no matter how well resourced. Quantitative data is very, very valuable, and it often tells us the what. Has the program worked? How well it's worked? And it provides measurable, often in number form, indicators of success or failure. Qualitative data, that is stories, themes, words, meaning, provide a rich source of knowledge about how a program might work, or indeed how a program is delivered in practice, and very, very critically, what is the personal experience of those people who are recipients of the social program. Really, the gold standard in evaluation is often bringing together qualitative and quantitative data sources. They're not in competition, rather they complement each other and help us understand the what and the how. We really want to know about not just what outcomes are achieved, but the lived experience of those outcomes and how those outcomes are achieved in practice when the social program's implemented on the ground.